first known rules of golf were drawn up in 1744 by the Gentlemen Golfers of Edinburgh in Leith, Scotland. Since then the game has changed dramatically. Golf courses, equipment, and not least the rules. So where do I go when I want to learn about the rules of the game today? Well, I go to the Golf Rules Questions podcast with Blakey and Roscoe, of course. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast.
Hey everyone, episode 58 of Golf Rules Questions podcast with myself and Stuart McPhee. Welcome along, Stuart.
Thank you, Blakey. Great to be here.
Yes, you are currently in Melbourne, and I am currently.
back home. Yes.
That's right. You've been in Queensland last week, and I am currently in London in the UK. So, coming to you from there. Because we've got a very special event coming up this week, which I'll go into later in the podcast. But first of all, what do we have to cover?
Well, the first thing we should do is the GRQ OTW from episode 57 from last week. And this was Fraser, whose ball became lodged in the fork of a tree about a foot off the ground, and thought, well, this is too difficult for me to hit from where it is. Just with his foot, just kicked it out of that fork of the tree. It landed on the ground, and then he proceeded to play his next stroke from that new position. And the question was, were there any penalties? And if so, how many and why? And he completed play the hole from that new position.
Yeah, so he's kicked it out of the tree. I think the club captain might have tapped him on the shoulder or something like that. And in the end, the number of penalties is 2 because he played from a wrong place. Now, the committee would have to work out, and obviously the club captain saw all this, but the committee would need to work out whether it was a serious breach, which would involve possibly a disqualification if he teed off on the next hole, or signed his scorecard if it was the last hole of his round. But obviously the club captain saw it, so he would be in a good position to make that call. But if an interesting one that we were sort of just thinking about in the answer was if Fraser was actually trying to improve his conditions, or potentially did improve his conditions, and then caused the ball to move and played it from the different position, he would actually end up with 4-stroke penalty, two stroke penalties in stroke play. Obviously, just one of those 2-stroke penalties would be loss of hole in match play. But yeah, and if he's improved his conditions, or potentially improved his conditions affecting the stroke, say breaking the branch that was holding the ball, then the ball falls out and he plays it from the new position, then he's just going to get he's going to get 2 times 2. If he had put the ball back, if he breached, improved his conditions, but put the ball back, he would just get how many penalty strokes, Stuart?
Well, for 9.4, is that what you're saying? Moving the ball in play would be 1
Well, it would be the bigger of the penalties.
If he's improved the conditions. Well, if he's improved the conditions affecting stroke, that's 2-stroke general penalty.
Yeah, that'd be 2 strokes. So
breaching 8.1. Yeah.
Even though it'd be 2 and 1, if he'd put the ball back, it would just be the 2, because it's the bigger of the 2 penalties. So an interesting sort of ruling, an interesting sort of question and ruling there for the separate and unrelated acts, or related and unrelated acts. But in this case, it would be just the 2-stroke penalty for playing from a wrong place.
It's just interesting on that, 14.7, which is what's happened here, playing from a wrong place. And, there's 2 levels of penalty for that. One's either general penalty, or you mentioned potential disqualification if it's a serious breach. You'd almost wonder if the committee would take into consideration, like the kicking of the ball almost seems disrespectful to the game. it's not as if he just gently picked it up and thought, well, I'm not playing it from the oldest plate over here. It was almost just the aggressive, disrespecting the game. Not that I would suggest it would be a serious breach, but you wonder if the committee would consider the actions which led to him, in fact, playing from a wrong place. Obviously it's a case-by-case basis, isn't it? Whether it's a serious breach or not, and the committee has to make that decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a code of conduct thing as well.
Yeah.
And, if we look at 1.2 just quickly, which is quite an interesting, there's an interpretation there about what they believe is a breach of code of conduct and what wouldn't really breach the code of conduct. So examples of actions by a player that are likely to be considered serious misconduct: deliberately causing serious damage to the putting green, disagreeing with the course setup and taking it on themselves to move tee markers or boundary stakes, throwing a club towards another player or spectator, deliberately distracting other players while they're making strokes, removing loose impediments or movable obstructions to disadvantage another player that after that other player has asked him or her to leave them in place. Wow. Repeatedly refusing to lift the ball at rest when it interferes with another player in stroke play. It says repeatedly, so just doing it once would sort of be more of a warning. Deliberately playing away from the hole and then towards the hole to assist the player's partner. Deliberately not playing in accordance with the rules and potentially gaining a significant advantage by doing so, despite incurring a penalty for a breach of the relevant rule. So that's pretty much the one that you're talking about.
Under there, yeah.
Yeah, so not, even if they do incur that 2-stroke penalty, they, as you said, didn't play in the spirit of the game, and potentially they get a disqualification for that. That's that Phil Mickelson one from a few years ago.
Well, when he made a stroke at the moving ball.
Yeah,
when he
it's
missed
not
the putt,
really.
It was going to go off the edge.
And he got the 2-stroke penalty, which was the dumbest decision ever. But it was a bad look on golf, basically.
And you've used better words there. I just said, but it's within the spirit of the game, and whether something like, aggressively sort of kicking it out, as I said, it's almost disrespecting. Anyway, very much up to the committee's discretion to make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
I think, I don't know, there's one here that might actually get me in trouble every time I play. Repeatedly using vulgar or offensive language. I mean, if you don't drop the F-bomb when you play golf, are you even playing golf? But anyway, that's the GRQ OTW for week 57.
If you don't, are you playing within the spirit of the game?
Yeah, that's right. Remember that golf was built, created by Scotsmen. I'm not saying that they swear a lot. I'm just saying that they probably created the swear words as well. What's that saying?
Very funny.
Golf. They only came up with the word golf because all the other 4-letter words were taken.
4-letter words. Yeah, I believe that.
So,
we probably need to move on.
Yes.
And we're going to move on
next?
to your latest video, which I think is a great situation, which so many club golfers could potentially find themselves in. And this was one of the, or in fact, it's the world #1 women's player in Jin Young Ko at the LA Open not so long ago, where she pulled an approach shot to the 17th green left, and it landed and came to rest in a red penalty area. And right in front of her, between her and the putting surface, was a concrete, like almost retaining wall, which was probably a little bit higher than her. And she's attempted to hit a wedge out and almost like a bunker shot and just get it out onto the green. It's hit that concrete wall and remain within the penalty area, made another attempt to hit, and then eventually her judgment has got, I probably just shouldn't need to take relief out of this red penalty area, and eventually did. And I think, so that's the scenario. So if you can talk through, I mean, it's just a red penalty area, but there's a twist on this, and that is having multiple shots or having at least one stroke from within that penalty area, but then the relief options available to you once you do that. So if you want to talk through that, please.
Yeah, so she's thought that she could make it over the wall with her first shot, which, as you said, was really high. It was actually probably higher than her caddy, who looked about 6 foot something. And she's left it in there. Now you still have the relief options under 17.1D, a penalty of 1 to get yourself out of the penalty area. You even have an extra option now to drop it back where you played it from within the penalty area, although that wouldn't have been a good option for her. But she then thought that she could attempt it again to try and get it out with the club, with a stroke rather than taking the penalty. Paid the price again, but that she still has those relief options no matter how many strokes are made within the same penalty area. It is important to note that if she had somehow got it out of the penalty area and it had deflected and rolled back in. Now she may, this is a hypothetical, but she may have a different last point of entry into the penalty area. She'd be afforded the same relief options, but just possibly in a different spot. So if you play from within a penalty area and you can't abstract it.
Extract it
out
of it, or exit, get out.
Extract it out of the penalty area, then you can play it again from where it is, or you can take those relief options going back to your last place played outside the penalty area, back on a line behind the last point of entry, in line with the flag behind the penalty area, or because it was red, this one, the lateral relief, which is within 2 club links. But if you hit it out and it comes back in, you exactly the same options, but possibly a different
reference point.
Different reference point now. So, Jin Young had to end up taking her medicine, and I think she ended up with a big fat 8 there.
I think, and this video is only just been recently posted and doing really well so far as views is concerned, and it's got quite a few comments. And of course, some of those comments are, hang on, she decided to play from within the penalty area. How did she end up taking relief out? So there's obviously a fair bit of confusion about the fact that you still retain that option of using the last point crossed as a reference point and taking your options outside. And if I can just add, this reminds me of the story you talked about with Kevin Na, how he's hit into a jungle, tried to get out, and then, of course, his last place play was right next to him, and he lost that ability to go back to the tee. So then he's really constrained about, well, back on the line is further into the jungle. Last place played is just there, and 2 club lengths, and he's sort of given up that. Whereas, obviously, if you're in the same penalty area, you still have that ability to get out of there under those, as you said, the relief options under 17.1D, 1, 2, and 3. But the unplayable, you don't. You sort of lose that.
And I know we're going to touch on course setup, and that's quite an interesting thing that we could touch on, because when you're setting up the course, penalty areas are so good now. And what I say by good is you can do exactly the same stuff in the general area, have a practice swing touching the ground, you can lift loose impediments. But if someone leaves it in the penalty area, they can still come back outside the penalty area. So when committees set up their courses, they can have that in mind. A big area of wooded trees, long grass, they can make penalty areas now, and that gives that player the option to come back outside that last point of entry that on the line that it crossed into.
It's a great point you make, and I was just going to say, it's a great point you make, and what we're seeing now is committees put in penalty areas where there's just no sign of water. There's no water anywhere, but they obviously recognise that it's a good opportunity to put a penalty area in for those very reasons, and to say that Kevin Na, for example.
Yeah, and even though I know at the start of this, you said, "Oh, it was a great video. It was a great situation." Well, I mean, it wasn't a great situation for Jin Young, but it is a good situation for, as we say, the club golfer to learn from and see how the rules are actually played. Now, it was funny because that actually I saw it happen at the International Series of England last week, actually on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. So there was a last couple of groups coming through, and Barry Henson from the US, he was on the 8th hole, and he's hit it into the penalty area right of the 8th hole, right of the 8th fairway, and it's somehow like that penalty area on the 8th on the right is actually cuts in right off the tee, and so if you hit one right, you're basically, your point of entry is probably 50 meters from the tee. But you can't, because it curls around, you can't really see it. So he comes down, and we can see it, and actually it had stopped sort of on this up hanging lie above this bit of a ditch. And so we were like, how did it stay there? Anyway, he goes, oh, and we were like, oh, like this. When he comes down, we're like, oh, and he's like, nah, it's fine, I can see it. And we're like, yeah, okay. And what he probably should have done is chip it backwards and get it in the fairway, but he decided to try and play it down towards the green and managed to knife it into the other side, the other bank. It hits a rock or something and pings back into the penalty area. So it never came out of the penalty area, same penalty area, pings back in. That was unplayable. So he chooses his option because he didn't want to go back to the tee, didn't want to go back in line, didn't want to go 2 club lengths from his last point, last entry cross. And so he decides that he's going to drop it inside the penalty area within the 1 club length, effectively like an unplayable, like a stroke and distance inside, which is a very unusual and not one that you see very often. So he does that, and he takes about 2 minutes. Not good for pace of play, but he takes about 2 minutes to actually work out his relief area, just so that he doesn't want to drop it and it rolls within the 1 club length but stays in the ditch. Because then, you've 1 penalty stroke, and then you probably have to go and choose one of the other options for another penalty stroke. So, but he drops it and it rolls forward out of the relief area, drops it, rolls forward, and then he gets to place it, and then he gets to place it, and then he gets to place it, and it didn't come to rest, so he tries to place on the same spot again. Didn't come to rest, so he places it back a little bit further up the hill, comes to rest, ready to go, and then he's managed to chip it out after that. So it was 1 into the penalty area, 2 having a shot, 3 penalty shot, and then 4 out onto the fairway, and then he's hit 5 into the green and made 7, I think. So he's made a triple bogey. So then I follow him up, because they were last group. I follow them up the last hole, the 9th, which was one of the toughest hole at Slaley Hall. And he hits it left into the penalty area. And I find this ball, and I was like, oh, I don't think it's his. It was stuck in the penalty area halfway up a tree. And then the scorer comes along and goes, oh, I think it's that ball. And the scorer was right. It was actually in visibility. And Barry sees it and goes, oh, here we go then. And decides to try and have another shot at it. So it's in the penalty area, it's playable, and he tries to hit it backwards. Fats it, stays in the penalty area, but in the water, and he ends up taking the lateral relief drop. So there's 2 situations where it's slightly different, same player, left it in the penalty area, same penalty area both times, and had 2 different relief options. One was stroke and distance inside the penalty area, and the other was the lateral relief for the last point crossed, which was from shot 1, not from shot 2. So I think he ended up with another 7, and there you go. There's 6 shots over for the last 2 holes on that Saturday. So it wasn't great.
Imagine in the world of golf, if a ball is lying in the penalty area, how many times, or the ball comes to rest in the penalty area, what percentage don't play as it lies, just take one of the relief options? It'd have to be vast majority would take relief because there's a lot of water. It's just horrible. It's just difficult to get a club on the ball. But here we've had this guy two holes in a row. He's attempted to play as it lies, and then on both occasions not got out of the penalty area.
Not extracted it.
Exited, which brings in 17.2, which you don't see that often, really.
No, you don't see 17.2 come in. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, if it's water, like a big lake, you can't play as it lies. But if we are starting to make wooded areas and long grass as penalty areas, a lot of people will attempt to play it if they find their ball, and maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but so this is actually 17.2 probably comes in a little bit more, or is something that people need to know a little bit more than they possibly do.
Yeah, good point.
But yeah, international series.
Any more from that event?
I didn't really have too much. There were a lot of mole hills or mole holes. It was like they dig a hole, but then they leave their dirt above the ground, and so that one was a bit off-putting because there was sort of this dirt here, and then there was a little bit of sprinkling of dirt here, and you're like, well, is it part of the molehill or the mole hole, or is it just loose dirt? And so those are some things that we had to go through as a committee and cover off and either give relief or not give relief. It does say the loose material that animal dug out of the hole is included in the term animal hole.
Animal hole, yeah.
So if it's an animal hole and it's that loose material that animal dug out of the hole, then that is part of the ground under repair.
It's all part of it.
And then they get released. So I kind of gave someone relief, and you could have gone 50-50 with it. I didn't really feel that he shouldn't have got relief, but at the same time, he got really lucky with the relief. So I was like, that sucks. But yeah, and then there was another one. I had an embedded ball, and again, I was a bit 50-50 on this one. I didn't give the player relief for the embedded ball because it was really just embedded in this really soft leaves, but there was a bit of moss there as well, and yeah, it really got me thinking about where the actual surface of the ground starts when there's a lot of loose impediments on the grass.
Did you mark and lift the ball to check?
Yeah, we did. We lifted it, and then you could just see that there was a lot of leaves and it sort of but that does that that compost almost. No, not compost.
Very interesting. Yeah, the moss. Yeah.
Heat type thing. Does that become the surface of the ground? Probably something I should ask the RNA. But I didn't really have too many rulings, but I had a lot of time on the stopwatch. There were a lot of tough holes. A lot of holes. There wasn't too many drivers being hit, and a lot of layup holes. And the layup actually meant that now they're hitting 3, 4, 5 iron and making the hole longer and making the course longer. And that's fine off the tee. They sort of, okay, I'll hit 3 iron. I'm not going to be as wide off the tee, so we don't have to search for as many balls off the tee. But then they'll be their margin of error will be increased into the green, and they'll miss the green a lot more with those longer irons, which meant that they slow down around the green because they've got to have their chip shot, their first putt, and then possibly a second putt or whatever. So it actually slows them down around the green, even though they might not be as slow around the tee shots. And there was a couple of brutal holes like 18 and 9 and 4. So we really were trying to get onto the monitoring as quick as possible. But a couple of groups probably played in just over 5 hours, which isn't very entertaining, but it is what it is.
Interesting you talk about brutal holes and, making it tough for the players. I'd like to congratulate Minjee Lee on winning the US Open. An Australian, just a wonderful achievement to do it as, I wouldn't say comfortably, but in the end, the margin was comfortable. Just a wonderful performance by her, just fantastic. I was watching a lot of it, the back nine. Just on that, if I may, having watched it as much as I did the last round, I don't know if you knew this, but only 2 players during the 4th round broke par. Only 2. And here are the best players in the world, and only 2 of them broke par. I'd be interested in, you're talking about what the committee decides, what all you referees decide to do for marking an animal hole or whatever, or moles or whatever. How does a committee set up a course? What are some of the things they do to make it difficult for only 2 of the best players to break par?
Yeah, well, at the start of the week and throughout sort of the Monday, Tuesday, and the pre-week as well, probably more important, but you're looking at which pin positions you're going to set the course up with. I mean, the tee positions wouldn't really change. Actually, the tee positions, they're more likely to bring the tees up a little bit to maybe engage in a shorter par 4, or have them trying to go for the par 5s and 2. So you're actually going to more likely to bring the tees up on the weekend, whereas have the longest course you can on the Thursday, Friday. That's the norm. I'm not saying that's right, but that's the norm, or the usual story. But yeah, certainly the pin positions. Pin positions, in my mind, can change a hard course into an easy course, can change a slow course into a fast course, whatever. Just like that, you stick all your pin positions in the middle of the green and you'll find that they're accessible and the scoring's going really well. Whereas if you stick them in the corners, the players have to suddenly they can't just shoot at the middle of the green, and they can't just miss a green and then hit it out of the trees onto the green and be in a good position. So you'll have your Sunday pins. They're not stuck necessarily 3 foot from the edge of the green, from the fringe, but they will be in positions where you have to actually be in the perfect position off the tee, or there might not just even be a perfect position off the tee. You've just got to shape a shot in, or you've just got to basically play away from that pin position to the middle of the green, take your 2 putts, and get out of there with a par. So that's most likely what would have happened on the Sunday at the US Open, plus the fact that it's a Sunday at a US Open. It's amazing the scores that can occur when such a massive tournament is the winning is on the line and stuff like that. So the money for the women was incredible for that tournament, and everyone in the top 5, top 10 is thinking about that. I think Minjee ended up winning 1.8 million US. So filtered down from that, the next person probably got 900,000 or something, which is a lot of money for anyone.
Yep. The going through the scores to find out that only 2 broke par. There were a few 8s. There were a few. I don't mean whole scores. I mean round scores that were 80 something. There were a few of them. Yeah.
And
so,
the weather was okay, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. I mean, from what I saw.
So
it was fine.
So that really just tells you that the pin positions were put in tricky locations. Locations that if it was hard and fast and they were put at the front of the green with a false front, very hard location to get to. If they were put right tucked in behind a bunker, with the most of the women hitting 6 or 7 iron in, very hard to stop. So those are the things that if you tuck it behind a bunker with players hitting sandwich and wedge, it's still accessible. If you put it at the front when there's no false front, it's still accessible. But there are places on most greens that you can find that make it a little bit harder and a bit of a challenge. And if you put them all on the same day, scoring is going to be tricky.
I've certainly heard at club level on many, like countless occasions, how many people have this belief that there's a rule that says the hole cannot be within X distance to the edge of the green. In other words, maybe you've heard that before. I've certainly heard it a lot of times. In other words, I've seen a pin position which is really, I don't think they're allowed to put it that close to the edge of the green. Surely you've heard that.
You can millions of times. You can put it anywhere you like or the committee can put it anywhere they like on the green. But they just need to think about who's playing and the enjoyment of that player's round, and also the pace of play for the rest of the players. I mean, I saw, was it an NCAA tournament recently where you couldn't even stop the ball beside the hole. It was just ridiculous. And so people were actually, having good scores, and then suddenly they'd have a 14 because they were putting.
Wow.
That's not enjoyable for anyone.
That fails all those criteria you just mentioned, so far as enjoyment of
anyone
play,
watching, anyone playing. It's just not enjoyable at all.
Just quickly, just finally talked about the purse. The thing I heard on the Sunday was 7th place at the US Open was going to win more money than the winner of the LPGA tournament next week.
Well, that's good that they're growing the purses for some certain tournaments, and hopefully, onwards and upwards they'll get even more soon.
Now, speaking of big tournaments, can you share with us what you're doing this week, please?
Yeah, I was going to say it would be awesome if the LPGA and LIV Golf got together. I'm in London for the first ever LIV Golf tournament at Centurion. It's an interesting format. It's a shotgun start for 48 players at 2 p.m. There's 16 groups, which will be not quite on 16. I think the first couple of rounds they might be on 16 holes, but then the last day they might play a couple of groups off the first. But the Centurion course probably doesn't lend itself to the perfect shotgun start course, because the course basically stretches itself away from the clubhouse. So there's only about 3 tees that you could actually walk to. And then the rest are just miles away. But it's an entertainment vehicle. It's going to be fun to be a part of and watch. And everyone tees off at 2, and hopefully we'll have everyone in by 7 p.m. Light is fine. We don't have to worry about light this week. But then they're going to have some concerts and stuff afterwards. So it's a real entertainment vehicle using golf as the basis. But patrons can come in from 11 a.m. and make a day of it. Either on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they can get up close and personal with a lot of their favourite players. Not all their favourite players are going to be there, but it's a good start, and the players are enjoying it so far. There's lots of bad publicity, but at the same time, there's lots of publicity, free publicity. So make of it what you will. If you think it's something that you enjoy watching or whatever, then that's it. That's all it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an entertainment vehicle for you, the fans. And if you don't like it, you don't watch, and then they'll have to change their model. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. If people enjoy it, then they'll keep watching it, and LIV Golf will keep being something. If it's not enjoyable, if people don't turn up, they'll quit. It'll be a business decision and say that this isn't working and we need to try something else, and they'll go somewhere else. So I'm just really excited to be part of the first one. Whether it works or not, we'll see. But so at the moment, like yesterday, I went and saw the course for the first time. It looks hard, like it's long. We've got some 450 metre par 4s, and the ground is a bit wet because we've had a bit of rain in London. So I don't think the ball will be rolling too far. So it looks quite hard. There's a couple of short par 3s, but there's couple of real long ones as well. The greens, they'll get them up to, they're hoping to get them to about 11, which will be fast. I don't think it's going to get too windy here, so they don't have to sort of worry about that. The only sort of concern for weather-wise would be if it gets too wet. So you want to put the pin positions on higher spots, so it's not too, you put your pin positions in lower spots, you're going to more susceptible if it does start raining. But yeah, no, it's the Tuesday here now, and we're just getting set up for hopefully what will be an awesome tournament.
That sounds great, and we look forward to hearing about it once it's all done and dusted, maybe next week or so. I'm just interested now, you're 2 days out. So what do you, as a referee for this event, what will you do? What does that look like in the next 2 days? Walking the course, having meetings with the committee or the tournament director and their other referees. What does your next 2 days look like in preparation for the event?
Yeah, so yesterday I walked the course. I always try and walk the course the first day that I get there. I don't think I did in Thailand because I think I might have walked 9, but it was so hot. But here walking the course is good to warm up. But it's a bit of a slog, it's up and down hilly, and going all the way out there and all the way back was a bit of a slog, but not carrying clubs, so I shouldn't complain too much. But yeah, we were just checking it out, and you just sort of, with the chief referee and the tournament director, just saying, oh, we should do this with this hole, we should do that with the cart paths, or make him. We have some sleepers, some railway sleepers in bunkers, so we'll make them integral parts of the course, so that if your ball was up against it, you won't be able to get free relief. You have to take penalty relief to get out of that bunker, or even if you're outside the bunker and you have interference, you have to take penalty relief to get away from it. We look at the pace of play, how long we think the players are going to play, and hopefully they are around that time. They have to realise that this is an entertainment vehicle, and if they take too long, it's going to be looked on by everyone around the world as maybe this is a bit boring if people take too long, and then the entertainment it loses its value. So we need to make sure that the players are aware of this and they keep a good pace of play. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, those are the sort of little things. I don't actually do any of the marking. There's 7 of us, so there's plenty of people to do the marking. There were 4 penalty areas, I think. 4 penalty areas that they've marked. The out of bounds is basically the fence, so that's all right. You just need to put local rules what the out of bounds is. We do have a sort of a staked area around the clubhouse and around the driving range. But yeah, it's that
for out of bounds.
Yeah, for out of bounds. But it's just making sure the local rules are airtight and talking with the other referees about how the course should be set up and stuff like that. And then obviously, the lead-in time for our tournament director with the greenkeeper, the head superintendent, and how they want the course. That's all been done, 2 months ago type thing. So we can't really change that now. But there's a few bunkers that got a bit waterlogged with some recent rain, so they'll need to be looked after, maintained, and stuff like that. And then it's also so important that it's quite a big build here. So looking at the TIOs and where relief can be taken and whether we need drop zones and stuff like that. So yeah, it's cool. This is the prep. If you get the prep right before the tournament, then there shouldn't be any major issues for the tournament itself. We'd look at if there are any holes, dogleg holes that people might want to cut across, and whether we should put internal out of bounds, which we did last week at International Series England, but we won't be needing to do that this week.
That's all very cool. Thank you for sharing that. All very cool. As I said, look forward to hearing about it next week. Are we done for this podcast? We do have a GRQ OTW to cover before we finish, but anything else you'd like to cover?
No, I think actually I was trying to think of a couple of situations where knowing the rules could help you. And I'll leave one for the question for next week, because I know that you've got one in the chamber. But I was just thinking, if a dog picks up your ball, and then, let's say it's a friendly dog, but it could take some time to get the ball out of its mouth, because it wants to play a little bit around, whether it's your dog or someone else's dog. It's not going to bite you, but it's it's a playful dog that wants to hold onto the ball. You can actually, knowing the rules, you'd be able to substitute another ball, because you're 9.6 outside influence. Outside influence has taken your ball. Okay, you need to replace that ball, but if it's not easily retrievable, then you can substitute another ball. So that you could go over to that dog and maybe play around with its mouth and get the ball, but that could take 10, 20, 30 seconds. So you decide that it's not easily retrievable, and you can just replace another ball on the spot. And that it also takes out the fact that if it was just scuffed from the from the dog's teeth, if it was just scuffed from the dog's teeth, then you wouldn't be able to substitute another ball. You wouldn't be able to replace it. But the fact that it's not easily retrievable, you actually can just substitute in another ball. And so I'm sure there's other ones that we can think about. We, really do knowing the rules, or really knowing the rules is helpful. So now episode 58.
My first question to you, but my first question I was going to ask you, but you answered it, was, did the dog pick up the ball at rest, or was the ball still in motion? But you answered that when you mentioned 9.6. So, because obviously it's two different rules, but you answered that question anyway.
Yeah, well, 11.1 for ball in motion, because it was a dog, it was accidental. And then if it's in its mouth, you just pick the spot directly below where the dog is, and then move the dog along and proceed under that by substituting a ball.
Hopefully you don't have to invoke 16.2 if the dog doesn't get aggressive.
Yeah, that's right. I think we put in our blooper videos. We put in our blooper videos that one where the dog stole the ball in the European Tour event. That was quite funny.
Anyway, 16.2, for those who don't know, is a dangerous animal condition. So hopefully you don't have to invoke that one. Yes, GRQ OTW for episode 58 is Helen and Charlotte are playing in a stroke play event. And both are on the green. Their balls are both on the green. And Helen is just behind. Charlotte's a long way away and is first to play. Both the balls are sitting there. Charlotte putts. A little bit too much pace on it. Charlotte putts, and Helen realises that Charlotte's ball is going to go past the hole and come very close to her own ball, which is sitting there at rest on the green. So Helen very, very quickly leans down and picks up her ball to get out of the way of Charlotte's ball in motion. And then once Charlotte's ball passes, Helen then puts her ball marker down to mark the spot where she just lifted her ball from on the putting green. So Charlotte's putting, ball goes past the hole. Helen goes, oh, Charlotte's ball might hit mine. I know that's a penalty. So she leans down quickly, picks up her ball while Charlotte's ball is in motion, and puts a marker down to mark that spot. Is there any penalty by either player in that situation?
Sounds good by Helen. Good on you, Helen.
She was just trying to help. Just trying to help and avoid Charlotte getting the general penalty.
Good question. Let's see what the answers are that come in. Right.
Very good. So that's it for this podcast.
Episode 58. Sign off. thank you very much for co-hosting it with me.
Pleasure. Look forward to hearing about your event this week. I hope it's exciting.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll fly back and we'll do the next podcast next week after I've got over my jet lag.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, mate. Thank you.
Okay, see you later.
See you, everyone.